Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 8.3 PTR, where they have done quite the number of updates to several pieces of content that we looked at last week, and obviously we want to deep dive into this. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the changes, what they mean for you, and then at the end, some more conclusive opinions on what we're looking at, if that's what you're looking for. So first of all, the 2 outdoor assaults, invasions, whatever you want to call them, that are occurring in the open world, have had some more stuff added to them. A lot more is working. Last time we looked at a lot of it was broken, so we only got like a bare bones look. First, let's start with the Assault of N'Zoth, which typically takes place in Uldum. Now, these things do move around, but Uldum seems to be the popular one that they've released to us right now. They have finally got a lot of the bosses working down there, a lot of the events happening. So this isn't a place where you'll go and get daily quests, at least not yet. It's just the fact that Uldum is under attack. So when you go down there, you'll get a fill the bar type quest, very similar to Island Expeditions, but outdoors, where you'll get to do stuff. Now, killing enemies does yield you stuff to put in there, like 1% or whatever, and things like that. However, if you go and do the events and kill the rares, that is going to net you a lot more percentage in order to fill this bar as quickly as possible, and also a lot more of the main purpose of this content, which is to give you a resource called Coalesced Essence. Coalesced Essence is the resource you need to do the horrific visions, which is another feature of 8.3, and it all starts with these outdoor events. So that's the purpose here. Now, the Mogu event and the N'Zoth event are different, although they both look very similar and both have fill the bar type stuff. The N'Zoth one does not have world quests with it, however, it will give you a chest reward at the end. And these are all finished, both of them are finished in the same way, by completing the bar and then having an end boss, mini boss to kill. Once you do that, you are rewarded with a chest, which will give you, yet again, more Coalesced Essence. Not only that, but you'll also get these mini scenario invasions down here. These are similar to the horrific visions, but they're not actually full-on horrific visions. They're the same sort of thing. They're another scenario that you go into and you have a sanity bar, which is where your legendary cape comes in because it slows the degradation of your sanity, and you'll spend your time in there trying to kill the rare mobs and mini-bosses as quickly as possible, who will also, once again, provide you with this Coalesced Essence in order to enter the horrific visions. So the longer you spend in there, the more things you kill, the better off you are. The weaker trash mobs also drop Coalesced Essence, although in far less quantity than the rares and mini-bosses, which drop around 15 to 20 depending on which one you kill. Now, as a reminder, for some of you wondering about this, Coalesced Essence is a time-gated, or horrific visions are somewhat time-gated. Every week it looks like this resets, but your first vial that you create, or your first key to enter a heroic vision, will cost you about 100 Coalesced Essence. If you want to try again, that's going to cost you 200. And try again, 400. Try again, 800. Ultimately, it will cap out at 1600. It looks like if you can complete both of the outdoor areas, you should end up with about 200 to 250 Coalesced Essence. You probably get to 300 if you do a great deal of rare farming on a daily basis. We'll come back to that, don't worry about it. I said the Mogu instance is different. It is. The Mogu one is different now, in that it actually has daily quests associated with it. So this typically takes place in Vale of the Eternal Blossoms, although it can be like one half of the Vale or the other half of the Vale. And they actually have added in some daily quests now, which reward Coalesced Essence again. So it's the same thing here, except there's no chest reward for finishing it. You'll simply get like a chunk of Coalesced Essence, and also you'll just be wandering around, same sort of thing, killing rares, filling the bar. Now I will say this, because they've added daily quests into this, you naturally fill the bar, so the fill the bar element of this area is really irrelevant at this point, because it's simply a case of go and do the world quests. Go and do 3 world quests, that's all I had. Simply 3 world quests, you'll naturally fill the bar by doing that, and then you'll get these big chunks of Coalesced Essence. With the way the reward system is set up currently on the PTR, it's much more efficient if you only have the choice of one of the 2 outdoor areas to do in a given day, is to go and do the actual Mogu one and not the N'Zoth one, which is a little strange because it just simply flat out upfronts a lot more Coalesced Essence into your face. So that's something to bear in mind there. But you don't get a chest reward at the end of that, you just fill the bar and you will get some stuff. Right then, so now you have your Coalesced Essences, now you can go into the Chamber of the Heart, where you can begin the bigger feature of 8.3, which is the Horrific Visions, which have also had some updates. For the majority of the things, it seems they've buffed the difficulty a little bit, and they've redone some mobs to add some more complexity to them, a lot more stuns, a lot more horrify effects, things like that, which are not that fun because they can end your run, depending on what difficulty you're going on. Even with really good gear, which my druid has, is you can get blasted pretty heavily. Although the likelihood is by the time you're fully maxed out on your legendary cape and fully maxed out on the talent system that comes with the horrific visions, is that you'll probably have a much higher gear level than my druid has right now, which is basically Mythic Eternal Palace quality. You'll probably have much better gear by that point. Now, if you do reach the point where you're capped and you're done and you're like, okay, I don't need horrific visions anymore. However, you're not a raider, you don't do Mythic Plus, you're a solo player essentially, or that's just not content that's interesting to you. They have now added the Faceless Masks. I talked about this briefly the last time we looked at the horrific visions. These are masks that are hidden somewhere within your faction's horrific vision. Now, I will point this out. The horrific visions, of which there is an Orgrimmar one and a Stormwind one, are not faction locked right now. You can do either or. It's entirely up to you. If you prefer the Stormwind one, you can go and do that one, even if you're Horde. It costs you the exact same. You can do both. If you want to do a Horde one and a Stormwind one, you can do that. It's just going to cost you 2 Coalesced Essence charges to get inside. Now, the masks are hidden in your factions one. So when you speak to the guy, he will say something like, oh, the Mask of the Pained is hidden in the shadows, which means the Cleft of Shadow in Orgrimmar. It'll give you hints like that as to where they are. Now, currently, they're not actually within the horrific visions. They've put them on a vendor because they probably just haven't found where to conceal them yet or to hide them. So we can actually just buy them from a vendor and try these out. As suspected, these add an affix to the horrific visions to make them more difficult. Some of them, obviously, more difficult than others. We have a variety of options here in what we can add. We can add a pool of void that appears behind your character constantly, and if you stand in it, it will drain your sanity much quicker. We have one that starts summoning adds if you go below 30% sanity, which is really awkward because it keeps you in combat and you can't use the sanity regen ability while in combat, so you're extra punished if you let your sanity get too low. Lots of things like that. There's about 6 different masks that you can use, but they add everything to it, or 5 different masks. And you can stack them. You can stack them up, so you can have 5 of the difficulty affixes applied to you, and each one you add will also increase the damage the enemies do by 10% and the amount of health they have by 10%, which is where you start to feel a little undergeared in our current characters, because likelihood is you're supposed to have 8.3 gear while you're tackling these things. Now, adding Faceless Masks to the dungeon you're running, or to the horrific vision you're running, will reward you with an extra currency at the end of it called Orbs of Madness, these epic orbs. Now, Orbs of Madness currently are used to go to the vendor and buy certain items. Now, I will point this out. On the PTR right now, there are only 2 items purchasable with Orbs of Madness. One is a leather belt, or I'm a druid, so it's a belt and an azurite chest. And that's it. So the reward structure is not yet finalized. In our testing, though, what was interesting is you would think adding more Faceless Masks to your run would reward you with more Orbs of Madness. Currently, it doesn't do that. You add 1 Faceless Mask, which means every boss you kill inside a horrific vision does reward you with an orb. So you can get 5 orbs if you do all of the mini-bosses and the final boss in each horrific vision. That would net you 5 orbs. You would think doing it with 2 Faceless Masks means that killing each boss would give you 2. So you would finish the run with 10 and all the way up to 5. So ultimately, if you do the maximum difficulty run, which is 5 Faceless Masks with all the difficulty affixes and things, which is extraordinarily difficult, by the way, that, at least in current gear, extraordinarily difficult, then you would be rewarded with 25 of these Orbs of Madness. Now, currently that's not how it's working, but I will only assume it is supposed to work that way, and it will eventually work that way. So just something to bear in mind. I'll keep my peepers on it to see whether or not they alter it or change it, or whether they keep it the same, which is highly unlikely that if you do it on maximum difficulty, you get the same rewards of doing it with just 1 added layer of difficulty. A lot of people are questioning, like, just how soloable are these? The ones without Faceless Masks, okay? Running horrific visions without Faceless Masks entirely on your own is perfectly doable. It's totally fine. Doing it in a group is easier, though. It's totally fine to do it solo. You'll have no real issues there, but you can get this stun effect, this horrify effect, which can instant-kill you, and it basically ends your run, and as I pointed out earlier, it gets more expensive to run it each time, which means it's a level of frustration. If you do it in a group, even if that group is terrible, they can still resurrect you and bring you back to life, so your run isn't over should you get caught out and die. So even that, just ignoring every other benefit of having more players, is one big bonus. When it gets to the Faceless Masks, though, it's way, way easier with a group. Way, way, way. Even just having one extra player, just two man in it is so much easier. So much easier that I really question whether you dramatically overgear them to the point where collecting Orbs of Madness from the Faceless Masks is worth it in the first place, is something you would ever do. Because they're so much easier in a group environment. And that's something you probably want to watch out for. So if you are looking to push these, or to go hard on them or anything like that, if you're not in a guild or you haven't got a group of friends, is to definitely start making custom groups, because you will naturally have a much easier time if there are multiple people with you in the run. If you slightly overpull, they can save you from it. Anything like that can just keep you going in there, because these things are all about how long you can spend inside and how much you can get done. So bear in mind that although this is touted as solo player, at least from what I can see, and again, this is not including the 8.3 gear, which will make a big difference, they are not easy when you start adding the Faceless Masks in. Certainly more than one. Once you start going to 2, 3, 4, and certainly 5, they are exceptionally difficult, and that's something you want to bear in mind. We couldn't finish one with 5, with 2 of us, because it was just too difficult. You could die so quickly inside there. That is something to bear in mind. So that's how it's looking. Some things I don't know yet. I do not know what the system is in order to upgrade our legendary cloak or how our acquisition will be. From everything I can see, we're going to basically be given the legendary cloak at the start of 8.3. There'll probably be some sort of mini quest where Rathion just gives it to you. And from there, you'll start upgrading it. Maybe Rathion himself upgrades it. Who knows? Rathion is in the Chamber of Heart. He is chilling there, but he's not doing anything right now. I imagine it's something like that, and no doubt is tied to the horrific visions in some way. But exactly what that system is, I don't know. We still do not know what Horror Forging is. Whatever the new system of Titan Forging, Wall Forging, whatever the hell it is, we still have absolutely no idea what that is. So I will keep you updated soon, because I'm waiting to know as quick as you guys. Some conclusions here then, and some more discussion. Those are the new features and the changes they've made to them. Some thoughts then. One thing that stands out massively to me today is the outdoor content that they're putting in terms of the Mogu invasions and the N'Zoth ones, is they are straight up reusing. The reason they chose the Veil of Eternal Blossom is no surprise. They are straight up reusing a lot of the areas that were done for Mists of Pandaria dailies. If you were getting friends with Rathion back in Mists of Pandaria, then the Mogu stuff, and you probably saw that in the footage, is remarkably similar. In fact, they're just straight up reusing a lot of the world quests, rare mobs and things like that there. They have added more to it. Right? They've probably added as much to it as they've done with the fresh N'Zoth invasions, which means side by side, there's no comparison. In fact, it makes the N'Zoth invasions, the ones down in Uldum, seem positively ridiculous, because there's so little going on there in comparison to what's happening in the Mogu ones, because the Mogu ones are not only adding all the new stuff in that the guys have created, but they're also reusing all the stuff that was originally there in Mists of Pandaria in terms of rare mobs and world quests and things like that. It feels dumb. It feels dumb because you go to do the N'Zoth invasion, you're like, there's barely anything here. There's a couple of events, there's a few rare mobs, there's some chests. That's about it. You go to the Mogu one, you've got the Gulai Palace, you've got all the rare mobs that were associated with Mists of Pandaria already, and then on top of that, you've got all the events, you've got all the extra mobs, and you've got all this stuff that the N'Zoth invasions have. So it's almost twice as much stuff happening, if not more, because one can argue, and I would agree with this, that there was more care and attention to detail put into the outdoor worlds and the world questing systems of Mists of Pandaria than there has been with a lot of the BFA stuff. I think that's a fair shout. So side by side, these look really fucking dumb. And they want to probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, they're going to put more development time into the N'Zoth invasions rather than it coming across as wonderfully artistic and gorgeous, as it always is, because the art team is stellar, yet really lacking in stuff going on. There's a couple of things happening, don't get me wrong, but compared to how much stuff is happening in the Mogu one with flying dragons, underground dragons and all this, Mogus and little events and sealing up spirits and all this kind of stuff, then it just looks really stupid and lazy. It looks very lazy in comparisons. It's like, yeah, now you're reminding us of what Mists of Pandaria dailies were like. And there was a lot of that stuff because they were heavy on the dailies in Mists of Pandaria, and it kind of makes BFA look even worse. Another point here, which I think is important, is there is a new reputation faction in the Rajani. I've seen a lot of feedback from people recently, and I have to agree with this, and I think this is a good place to bring this up, is all of this content is completely mandatory for your character to be relevant in 8.3. And it's also massive, once again, similar to Najdatar, similar to Mechagon, similar to all the other stuff. It's just another massive grind that realistically, if you want to keep your character up to date, is a daily grind. Every day. Until it's over, which who knows when that will be, because I still have things to farm in BFA because of the nature of the time gating and collecting arbitrary resources like pearls. I still have things to do on my other characters on that content. It just never seems to end, and it's not that fun at all in order to get that done. In fact, it's extraordinarily tedious. And for those people who don't want to invest day after day grinding out not only the zones and filling the bars, but filling the rares out, getting every essence they can do, certainly as some of this is now group content and it's resource locked, so everybody needs to have the key. So if you want to take part in your group's runs, then you're going to have to farm as much as they are. Otherwise, you won't have the keys to get in, and they have the keys, so they're going to push even further ahead. It all goes round and round in an endless circle of, like, realistically, if you want to be competitive, you want to be that guy, then it's just like day on day on day on day of traveling to these zones, killing every rare possible, same as we did with Najdatar, collecting all these. I mean, Coalesced Essence might as well be pearls at this point, and then trying to spend them, not getting what you want, and then going back and doing it again. Until the end of time, until the end of whenever they decide, until you've got absolutely everything. But if it's something you want all the time, or you're somebody who enjoys a couple of days away from World of Warcraft, you're definitely going to be behind. That's just the nature of the beast with this stuff. Comparing it, and the reason I think it's relevant now is a lot of people are comparing this to Classic World of Warcraft. I like both. I enjoy raiding on retail, and I enjoy Classic as well, but I've got to say one of the biggest strengths I have right now, and is so blatantly apparent to me, is that everything I want to do in Classic besides literally raiding is entirely optional. I can happily, I've only been capped for 2 weeks, but I can happily raid and do the best fun that I have in that game, log out and not log in for another 7 days, and then log in on the next raid night and be absolutely fine. I have not fallen behind. I have not done anything wrong. I am completely fine to do that if I choose to. Yet there are literally hundreds and hundreds of things in Classic that I want to do, but are entirely optional. They won't do much of anything to help me improve right now. They're little upgrades that I want for my character. I want this item for my character. Do I need it? Absolutely not. We've already killed everything that's in the game. There is no, like, need or push. I'm not letting anybody down by not getting it. It's all fine. I can do that if I want to. And the fact that I can do that, and my playtime with Classic is entirely at my discretion as to what I want to do when I log in. I don't log in and think to myself, let's make this easy. I don't log in and think to myself, right, I need to go and do the Oldham dailies. I need to go and do the Mogu dailies. I then need to see who can do Heroic Visions. I then need to do this, 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 and this. I need to make sure my AP is up to scratch. I need to do all this stuff before I can start taking part in the content I want to do. I have none of that. And with more and more people coming to me and saying, actually, this is so... I actually spend infinitely more time playing Classic because what I'm doing is something I want to do. It's not something I'm being told to do, and therefore I'm enjoying it a lot more, and I log in with purpose and vigor. And if I don't want to log in for a couple of days, it's fine. It's totally fine. Nothing happens. I don't miss out. There's no, I missed out on the reset or anything like that. Then this stuff that's real mandatory day-to-day grind all the time that's coming up as a feature is something that's definitely turning people off. So that's understandable from my point. And I was literally reading a thread today. It's like a lot of people who quit World of Warcraft because if they weren't able to play a lot, they just felt naturally behind. And the reality is they are behind. That is the nature of the way things go in BFAs. If you're not able to log in all the time, whether you want to or not, then you do fall behind. That creates resentment. And obviously it breeds into the type of player who has scuffed characters saying, well, I didn't do it. It's like, well, we can tell. We can tell. And that's certainly not something that a lot of players strive for in their RPG. So there you go. Everything I've seen so far in the PTR in terms of the new features does appear to be mandatory. I wish it wasn't the case, but everything seems to be linked together and so interwoven that is definitely going to be the case. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.